A mysterious signal in the vast expanse of the Zenthari territory. Commander Cyril stood on the bridge of the Supremacy, the flagship of the Zenthari armada. Around him, the control panels glowed with blue and silver light, and his crew busily managed the endless streams of data. Zenthari space was vast, and their fleet was the strongest in the galaxy. At least, that's what they believed. "Commander," said Lieutenant Orvik, his voice sharp and tense, "we've intercepted a signal. It's unlike anything we've seen before." Cyril turned, his dark eyes narrowing. "What kind of signal?" Orvik hesitated, his clawed fingers tapping nervously on his console. "It's human, sir. The language matches the records we've gathered about a primitive species from the Sol system." "Humans?" Cyril scoffed. "They're barely out of their own orbit. What could they possibly send that would reach this far?" The signal, though faint, pulsed with a steady rhythm, repeating the same pattern. To the Zenthari, it was an enigma. A race so insignificant should not have the means to broadcast this deep into space. Yet, here it was, a message sent boldly into the void. "Decipher it," Cyril ordered, stepping closer to Orvik's station. The faint hum of the ship's engines filled the silence as the crew worked to analyze the signal. After a few moments, the translation appeared on the screen. The words were simple: "Welcome to the Sol system. Approach with peace, or not at all." Cyril read the message aloud, his voice laced with disbelief. "Peace. These humans think they can dictate terms to us." "It could be a warning," Orvik said cautiously, "or perhaps an invitation." Cyril chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. "An invitation to what?" "Their destruction. Set a course for the Sol system. If these humans want to play games, we'll remind them why the Zenthari rule the stars." The bridge crew obeyed, entering coordinates into the ship's navigation system. The fleet, a formidable array of warships, shifted into formation and engaged their warp drives. In an instant, the Zenthari armada vanished into the shimmering folds of hyperspace. The journey was brief, but the tension on the bridge grew with every passing second. Cyril stared at the viewport, his mind racing with thoughts of conquest. The humans were bold, too bold. They needed to be taught a lesson. He imagined their small, fragile ships trying to defend themselves against the might of the Zenthari fleet. It would be a quick, decisive victory. "Emerging from warp in 3, 2, 1, Orvik announced. The swirling colors of hyperspace faded, replaced by the dark expanse of the Sol system. The Zenthari fleet appeared just beyond the orbit of Neptune, their ships casting an ominous shadow over the icy planet. But it wasn't the planets that caught their attention. It was the massive object hovering near the asteroid belt. "What is that?" Cyril demanded, leaning forward in his chair. Before them was a battleship unlike anything the Zenthari had ever seen. It was colossal, its dark surface gleaming under the distant light of the sun. The ship's design was angular and efficient, exuding an aura of raw power. Emblazoned on its hull were the words, "The Titan." "That is human." Orvik's voice trembled slightly. "It's far larger than anything we anticipated." Cyril's jaw tightened. The humans were not supposed to have such advanced technology. This ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a statement. A challenge. The humans were daring the Zenthari to approach. "Scan it," Cyril barked. "I want to know everything about this ship. Its weapons, its defenses, its weaknesses." The crew worked quickly, their scanners prodding the Titan. But the results were confusing. "Commander," Orvik said, his voice uneasy, "the energy readings from this ship are off the scale. It's emitting more power than our entire fleet combined." Cyril's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. It must be a trick." "No, sir," Orvik replied. "The readings are consistent. Whatever this ship is, it's unlike anything we've ever encountered." The Zenthari fleet held position, their weapon systems at the ready. Yet, the Titan made no move. It hovered silently, its massive presence a quiet warning. Why aren't they responding? Tyrell muttered. He felt a flicker of doubt, but he quickly pushed it aside. The Zenthari armada was undefeated. No mere human ship could stand against them. "Send a probe," he ordered. "Let's see how they react." A small, sleek drone launched from the Supremacy, speeding toward the Titan. The bridge crew watched in silence as the probe approached the human ship. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot out from the Titan, destroying the probe in an instant. The crew gasped. Zyrel's claws dug into the armrests of his chair. "So, they want to play this game." "Commander," Orvik interrupted, his voice urgent. "They're sending a message." The screen lit up with a single sentence. "This is your only warning. Leave now or face the consequences." Cyril stared at the words, his pride clashing with the growing sense of unease in his chest. The humans were no longer the primitive species he had dismissed. This was something else entirely. "What are your orders, sir?" Orvik asked. Cyril's lips curled into a determined snarl. "We don't back down. Let's see if these humans can live up to their threats." As the Zenthari fleet edged closer to the Titan, the silence of space seemed to grow heavier, the tension almost tangible. Something about the human ship felt different, and for the first time in his career, Tyrell felt the cold touch of doubt. What had they just walked into? The standoff. The Zenthari fleet maintained its imposing formation, their sleek, black ships gleaming under the dim light of the Sol system. Tyrell paced the bridge of the Supremacy, his frustration mounting. He hated the silence from the human ship. Silence wasn't supposed to feel this threatening. "They're mocking us," Tyrell growled. His claws scratched faint marks into the armrest of his command chair. "Activate full communications override. Force them to respond." Lieutenant Orvik hesitated. "Sir, if we—" "Now, Orvik." Tyrell barked. The communication officers followed the order, and a deep booming voice filled the void between the two fleets. It was Tyrell's own voice, amplified and transmitted to every corner of the Sol system. "Humans, this is Commander Tyrell of the Zenthari Armada. You have exactly 10 seconds to respond and acknowledge our superiority, or we will consider your silence an act of defiance. Submit now, and perhaps we will show you mercy." On board the Titan, Captain Reyna stood on the bridge of the human battleship, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm of activity around her. Officers moved with purpose, their hands dancing across glowing panels. A holographic display in the center of the room showed the Zenthari fleet in sharp detail, every ship tagged and tracked. "They've sent another demand, Captain," said Commander Lane, her second in command. Typical posturing. Reyna smirked. "They think they're in control. Let them. How long until they lose their patience?" "Not long, I'd wager," Lane replied. "They don't seem like the subtle type." Reyna's gaze lingered on the hologram. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a strategist. Every move the Zenthari made revealed something about their thinking, their pride, their desperation. "Maintain silence," she ordered. "Let them stew. Back on the Supremacy. They're still ignoring us." Tyrell slammed his fist against the console. "How dare they insult us this way?" "Commander," Orvik said carefully, "perhaps their silence isn't arrogance. It could be a trap." Tyrell spun on him, his eyes blazing. "A trap? From a species barely capable of interstellar travel. We are the hunters, Orvik, not the prey." But deep down, a nagging doubt clawed at the edges of Tyrell's mind. Why weren't the humans responding? Why hadn't they tried to negotiate or defend themselves? "Prepare a warning shot," he ordered. "Target the space just ahead of their ship. I want to see how they react." The weapons officer nodded, and moments later, a glowing beam of energy lanced out from the Supremacy, slicing through the void toward the Titan. The shot blazed brilliantly, illuminating the human ship in sharp relief. And then something extraordinary happened. Before the beam could reach its target, it vanished. A shimmering barrier appeared around the Titan, absorbing the energy completely. The barrier pulsed faintly, then returned to invisibility, as if mocking the Zenthary's attempt. The bridge of the Supremacy fell silent. Virel's jaw tightened as he stared at the human ship, which remained utterly still, untouched, unimpressed. What was that? Virel demanded. A defensive shield. Orvik shook his head. No, sir. It's something else. The energy readings, they don't match anything in our database. Cyril's claws gripped the edge of the console. This wasn't how this encounter was supposed to go. The humans weren't supposed to have technology like this. They weren't supposed to make him feel vulnerable. Aboard the Titan, Reyna allowed herself a small smile as she watched the energy from the Zenthary's shot dissipate harmlessly against their barrier. Do you think they're getting nervous yet? Lane asked. They should be, Reyna replied. They wanted our attention, and now they have it. One of the officers turned from their station. Captain, they're preparing another volley. Larger this time. Reyna nodded. Of course they are. Let them think they can escalate. We won't play their game. Not yet. On the Supremacy, Tyrell leaned forward, his teeth bared. Charge the forward cannons. We'll force them to respond. Orvik hesitated. Commander, if their defenses can withstand our beams, escalating might not be the best strategy. Enough, Tyrell roared. I will not have the Zenthari armada humiliated by some backwater species. Fire. This time, 3 beams of energy streaked toward the Titan, burning brighter and faster than before. The bridge crew held their breath, waiting to see the results. Once again, the beams vanished before reaching their target. This time, the barrier didn't just absorb the energy, it reflected a faint ripple back toward the Zenthari fleet. One of the smaller Zenthari ships, caught in the ripple's path, lost power immediately. Its lights flickered and died, leaving it adrift in space. Commander, Orvik shouted. They didn't even fire a weapon. They just deflected us. Cyril stared at the screen, his rage giving way to a cold, creeping fear. The humans had done nothing offensive, yet they had already crippled one of his ships. What are they waiting for? He muttered to himself. Why don't they attack? The Titan responds. Just as the Zenthari began to regroup, a message came through. It was a single sentence, displayed in stark white text against the black screen. This is your only warning. Leave now or face the consequences. Reyna's calm, measured voice followed the text. We seek no war, but if you continue to provoke us, we will defend ourselves. Turn back now, Commander Kyrell. The bridge of the Supremacy descended into chaos. The Zenthari had never been spoken to this way, not by anyone. Tyrell clenched his fists, his pride and fear warring within him. Prepare the fleet, he said through gritted teeth. We will teach these humans who truly rules the stars. But as he stared at the Titan, silently watching them, a question lingered in his mind. What are we truly up against? The first shot. Commander Cyrill's fury burned hotter with every passing moment. The Titan loomed before the Zenthari fleet, as still and silent as a mountain. Its defiance felt almost personal, a silent mockery of the Armada's might. Enough games, Tyrell growled. If they won't engage, we'll force them to. Orvik hesitated. Commander, their defenses. Silence, Orvik. Cyrill's voice thundered across the bridge. Deploy our strike wings. Let them see the full force of the Zenthari armada. Aboard the Titan, Captain Reyna watched as a wave of Zenthari fighter ships swarmed toward her battleship. Dozens of sleek black vessels fanned out in perfect formation, their movements precise and calculated. They're testing us, said Commander Lane, his tone laced with both amusement and irritation. Classic intimidation tactics. They'll learn soon enough, Reyna replied, her voice calm and measured. Deploy the drones. From the Titan's underbelly, a dozen small disc-shaped drones emerge, gliding into position. They hovered in a defensive perimeter around the ship, their surfaces pulsing faintly with blue light. The Zenthari fighters hesitated for only a moment before charging forward, their weapons blazing. Plasma bolts streaked through the void, converging on the Titan. And then the drones activated. Each drone emitted a web-like field of energy, weaving together to form an intricate lattice around the ship. The plasma bolts struck the lattice and dissolved into harmless sparks of light, leaving the Titan untouched. On the supremacy, Cyrul's jaw tightened as he watched the display. The drones moved with an eerie precision, neutralizing every attack with effortless efficiency. "This is unprecedented," Orvik muttered. "Commander, their defense systems are far beyond anything we've encountered." Cyril ignored him. "Order the fighters to switch to close-quarters tactics. Overwhelm their drones. They can't possibly defend against all of us." The first response. As the Zenthari fighters closed in, the Titan finally made its first move. Its massive cannons, which had been silent until now, began to glow with a faint golden light. Without warning, a single projectile launched from the human ship, a sleek, silvery missile that cut through space with terrifying speed. But instead of targeting the fighters, it passed harmlessly through their ranks, heading toward open space. "What was that?" Cyril demanded. "A misfire." But then, the missile detonated. It wasn't a conventional explosion. There was no fire, no visible destruction. Instead, a wave of distortion rippled outward, bending space itself. As the wave passed through the Zenthari fighters, their ships began to falter. Engines sputtered, targeting systems glitched, and entire squadrons veered off course, unable to maintain formation. "They've scrambled our systems," Orvik shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "The fighters are completely disoriented." Cyril's claws dug into his chair. "Recall them. Regroup. Aboard the Titan." "Minimal force," Reyna said, watching as the Zenthari fighters retreated. "We don't need to destroy them to make our point." "Are you sure about that, Captain?" Lane asked. "They don't strike me as the type to give up easily." "They won't," Reyna replied. "But we've planted doubt in their minds. That's enough for now." The Zenthari strike back. Back on the supremacy, Cyril seethed with rage. The humans' technology wasn't just advanced, it was humiliating. The Zenthari had been reduced to a spectacle, their might rendered meaningless. "Prepare the main cannon," he ordered. "If their defenses can absorb small arms fire, let's see how they handle raw power." The supremacy's main cannon, a colossal weapon capable of decimating entire fleets, began to charge. The weapon emitted a deep hum, its energy building to a crescendo. "Target their ship," Cyril commanded. "Maximum power." The cannon fired, unleashing a beam of pure energy that streaked toward the Titan. It was the Zenthari's deadliest weapon, a show of force that no ship in the galaxy could withstand. But the Titan didn't even flinch. As the beam struck the ship, it was met with a shimmering field of energy that seemed to ripple and bend reality itself. The beam twisted, spiraling around the ship before dissipating into harmless sparks. The Zenthari bridge fell silent. Cyril stared at the display, his rage giving way to disbelief. The Titan's reply. For the first time, the Titan moved. The massive ship rotated slightly, its cannons aligning with the supremacy. A new message appeared on the Zenthari monitors. "Your arrogance has cost you enough. Leave now, or the next demonstration will be fatal." The words sent a chill through the Zenthari crew. Cyril's hands trembled as he read them. The humans weren't bluffing. He could feel it. "Commander," Orvik said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we should retreat. This is a battle we can't win." Cyril turned to him, his eyes blazing with defiance. "Retreat? Never. They've humiliated us. If we leave now, the entire galaxy will see us as weak." But even as he spoke, Cyril couldn't shake the sinking feeling in his chest. The humans had turned his fleet into a helpless audience, mere spectators to their own defeat. As the Titan's cannons began to glow with that same golden light, Cyril was forced to confront a terrifying possibility. What if the Zenthari armada wasn't the predator in this encounter, but the prey? Humanity strikes back. The silence on the bridge of the Supremacy was deafening. The Zenthari armada, once feared across the galaxy, had been reduced to spectators. Commander Cyril's pride fought a losing battle against the cold truth staring him in the face. The humans were far more advanced than anyone had believed. "They're preparing to fire," Orvik said, his voice trembling. "Commander, their cannons are locking onto us." Cyril's claws scraped against the metal armrest of his chair. He opened his mouth to issue an order, but the words caught in his throat. What could he possibly say? Retreat? Attack? Negotiate? None of these options felt viable. For the first time in his career, Cyril was paralyzed by uncertainty. "Commander," Orvik's panicked voice broke the silence. "They've launched something." Aboard the Titan, Captain Reyna watched as the Supremacy and its fleet shifted nervously in space. Her holographic display tracked every ship, showing their movements in real time. "Fire the gravity round," Reyna ordered. "Target a safe distance from their fleet. Let's make it clear we're not here to destroy them." Yet, the Titan's main cannon hummed with energy before firing a single glowing projectile. Unlike the Zenthari's chaotic energy beams, this weapon moved deliberately, cutting through space like a needle. It wasn't aimed at any ship. Instead, it detonated in the emptiness beyond the fleet. The explosion wasn't visible at first. There was no fire or debris, only a ripple in the fabric of space itself. Then, everything changed. On the Supremacy, the ripple expanded, growing into a shockwave that washed over the Zenthari fleet. It wasn't destructive, at least not in the traditional sense. The wave disrupted the fundamental properties of matter, scrambling systems, and disorienting entire crews. On the Supremacy, lights flickered, and consoles sparked. Crew members stumbled as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. The ship's engines groaned, struggling against an invisible force. "Status report," Cyril shouted, gripping the edge of his console to steady himself. "Systems are compromised," Orvik replied, frantically typing on his console. "Engines are down to 30% power, weapons are offline, and our shields, they're completely gone." Cyril's eyes widened. "How is that possible? They didn't even hit us." "It's their weapon," Orvik said. "It's not just destructive. It manipulates space itself. We can't defend against it." Aboard the Titan, Reyna folded her arms, her gaze fixed on the Zenthari fleet. They were floundering, their once imposing formation reduced to chaos. "Hold fire," she said. "Let's see how they respond." Lane raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll retreat?" "They'll have to," Reyna replied, "unless they're willing to sacrifice their entire fleet." Cyril's dilemma. On the Supremacy, Cyril's mind raced. He had never faced an enemy like this before. The humans had completely neutralized his fleet without firing a single direct shot. Worse, they were holding back, toying with him. It was humiliating. "Commander," Orvik said cautiously, "we should consider a strategic withdrawal. If we don't..." Silence. Cyril snapped. "We are the Zenthari. We do not retreat." But even as he spoke, he could feel the weight of his crew's stares. They were terrified, their confidence in him shattered. If he pushed them into a losing battle, would they even follow his orders? Cyril clenched his fists. His pride screamed at him to fight, but his instincts, those same instincts that had kept him alive through countless battles, were urging him to flee. The Titan's ultimatum. A new message appeared on the Zenthari monitors. It was as stark and simple as the last. "This is your final warning. Leave now, or you will not leave at all." The words were followed by a visual. The Titan's main cannon glowing with a terrifying golden light. It was a clear message. The humans weren't bluffing. If the Zenthari stayed, they would be destroyed. "Commander," Orvik said, his voice trembling, "we can't win this. They've already crippled us without trying. If they fire that weapon—" Tyrell stared at the screen, his jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. Everything in him rebelled against the idea of retreat. But he wasn't just gambling with his own pride. He was gambling with the lives of his crew. "Order the fleet to fall back," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Orvik blinked. "Sir." "Do it," Tyrell roared. "Fall back to the outer edge of the system. We'll regroup there." A tactical retreat. The Zenthari fleet began to pull back, their ships limping away from the imposing figure of the Titan. It wasn't a full retreat, but it was enough to put distance between them and the human battleship. On the bridge of the Supremacy, Tyrell stared at the retreating view of the Titan. He hated the sight. It wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of everything he had underestimated. "This isn't over," he muttered. "The humans may have won this round, but we will return." Aboard the Titan, Reyna watched as the Zenthari ships disappeared into the distance. She felt a flicker of satisfaction, but kept her emotions in check. "Do you think they'll come back?" Lane asked. "Eventually," Reyna said. "But next time, they'll think twice before underestimating us." She turned to her crew. "Maintain position. If they return, we'll be ready." As the Titan remained in its silent vigil, one thing became clear. Humanity had claimed its place among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The human tactic. The Zenthari fleet lingered at the edge of the Sol system, their once proud formation reduced to a disjointed array of battered ships. Commander Kyrold stood at the viewport of the Supremacy, his reflection a grim reminder of his defeat. Around him, the bridge buzzed with hushed voices, each officer working to restore order to the crippled systems. "Commander," Lieutenant Orvik said, breaking the silence, "our scouts report no pursuit from the human ship. It remains stationary near the asteroid belt." Cyril's eyes narrowed. "They're waiting for us to make the next move." Orvik hesitated, then nodded. "It would appear so." Cyril turned sharply. "Then we'll give them something to wait for. Deploy the cloaked cruisers. We'll strike from the shadows and dismantle their defenses before they even realize we're there." "But Commander," Orvik interjected cautiously, "their technology has already proven." "Enough." Cyril snapped, his pride flaring. "They caught us off guard, but we are the Zenthari. We adapt. This time, they won't see us coming." Aboard the Titan, Captain Reyna stood calmly on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the holographic display. The Zenthari fleet had retreated to a safe distance, but she knew better than to assume they were done. "They're regrouping," said Commander Lane, his tone laced with irritation. "Pride like theirs doesn't let them retreat without a counterattack." "Exactly," Reyna replied, "which is why we're not going to give them the chance to strike first." Lane raised an eyebrow. "What's the plan?" Reyna tapped on the display, zooming in on the Supremacy and its surrounding ships. "We've been on the defensive, letting them test us. Now it's time we show them what they're really up against." She turned to her communications officer. "Activate Aegis Protocol. Deploy the kinetic drones and scramble the stealth net." The officer hesitated. "Captain, if we deploy the stealth net, they'll know we've been tracking their every move." Reyna smiled faintly. "Good. Let them know. It'll keep them guessing." The ambush that wasn't. On board the cloaked Zenthari cruisers, crews prepared for a stealth attack. The cruisers, equipped with advanced cloaking devices, were the pride of the Zenthari fleet. Silent and invisible, they could bypass even the most advanced detection systems. "Approaching target," reported the pilot of the lead cruiser, his voice low but steady. "They haven't detected us." The Titan remained motionless in the asteroid belt, its massive cannons idle. The Zenthari cruisers crept closer, positioning themselves for a precision strike. "Ready weapons," the cruiser captain ordered. "On my mark." Before he could finish, a faint hum echoed through the ship. It started as a vibration in the floor, growing into a deep, resonant sound that filled the air. "What's happening?" the captain demanded. The answer came too late. The cloaking devices on all Zentheri cruisers flickered and failed, their ships suddenly visible against the backdrop of space. Around them, dozens of small, glowing drones appeared, their surfaces shimmering with strange holographic patterns. The Zentheri cruisers were no longer the predators. They were the prey. On the Supremacy. "Commander," Orvik shouted, his voice panicked. "Our cloaked cruisers have been exposed. They're surrounded by some kind of automated drones." Cyril's claws clenched into fists. "How? Our stealth technology is unmatched." "It seems the humans anticipated our tactics," Orvik replied grimly. "Their drones have completely neutralized our cloaks." Cyril gritted his teeth. "Order the cruisers to engage. If they can destroy those drones." "Commander," Orvik interrupted, his voice shaking, "the drones are already attacking." The Titans strike. The drones moved with eerie precision, weaving through the Zentheri cruisers and disabling their systems with pinpoint accuracy. Each drone fired small bursts of concentrated energy, targeting engines, weapons, and communication arrays. The Zentheri ships, unable to retaliate effectively, were rendered helpless in minutes. From her position on the Titan's bridge, Captain Reyna watched the operation unfold. The drones operated autonomously, their actions guided by an AI designed to neutralize threats without unnecessary destruction. "Status?" Reyna asked. "All cloaked vessels have been disabled," the tactical officer reported. "Their systems are offline, and their crews are unharmed." Reyna nodded. "Good. Begin towing the cruisers to a safe distance. They'll think twice before trying that again." Cyril's growing despair. On the Supremacy, Cyril stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. Every move he made, the humans countered effortlessly. It wasn't just their technology, it was their strategy. They weren't reacting to his actions, they were predicting them. "They're toying with us," he muttered, his voice low. "Like we're children." Orvik didn't respond. He didn't need to. The truth was written across every terrified face on the bridge. The human message. As the Zentheri tried to regroup once more, a new message arrived from the Titan. This time, it wasn't text. It was a live transmission. Captain Reyna appeared on the screen, her expression calm but unyielding. "Commander Cyril, this is your final opportunity to leave our system peacefully. Your ships are disabled, your tactics exposed, and your fleet at our mercy. We do not wish to destroy you, but if you force our hand, we will." Cyril glared at the screen, his pride warring with his survival instincts. The humans weren't bluffing. He knew that now. But surrender, that was unthinkable. Reyna's voice broke through his thoughts. "Choose wisely, Commander. The galaxy is watching. The ultimate power." The bridge of the Supremacy was shrouded in tension. Commander Cyril sat rigidly in his chair, his mind a battlefield of emotions. Every instinct screamed for vengeance, but the reality of their situation was undeniable. The humans had neutralized every move he'd made without breaking a sweat. "Commander," Lieutenant Orvik said hesitantly, "the cruisers are being towed out of the combat zone. The humans haven't destroyed them. They're showing restraint." "Restraint?" Cyril spat the word as if it were poison. "No, Orvik. They're humiliating us. They want the galaxy to see the Zentheri brought to their knees." Orvik hesitated before responding. "Commander, if we continue this fight, there may not be a fleet left to show the galaxy anything." Cyril shot him a glare but said nothing. For the first time, he felt the weight of his position, the responsibility for the lives of his crew. He wasn't ready to surrender, but he wasn't ready to die, either. Aboard the Titan, Captain Reyna stood tall on her bridge, watching the Zentheri fleet's movements through the holographic display. Their hesitation was obvious. Cyril's pride was battling his fear, and that conflict was buying her the time she needed. "Captain," Commander Lane said. They're regrouping near the edge of the system, but they're holding position. It seems they're unsure whether to retreat or attack. Good, Reyna replied. That uncertainty is our greatest weapon. Deploy the neural disruptors. Let's show them exactly why they should stay away from Earth. Lane raised an eyebrow. Neural disruptors? You're pulling out the big guns now. Reyna smirked faintly. They've left us no choice. It's time they see what real power looks like. The neural disruptor array. As the Xanthari fleet maintained its position, a new energy signature began to radiate from the Titan. It was subtle at first, a faint hum detectable only by the most sensitive instruments. But within moments, the hum grew into a powerful pulse that rippled through space. What is that? Tyrell demanded as the Supremacy's systems began to fluctuate. Lights flickered, and the ship's engines groaned under the strain of the invisible force. Orvik's face paled as he analyzed the data. It's an electromagnetic wave, Commander, but it's different. It's affecting more than just our systems. Crew members are reporting dizziness, confusion, even hallucinations. Cyril's claws tightened around the armrests of his chair, a weapon that targets the mind. How could they? Before he could finish, the pulse intensified. Xanthari crew members across the fleet collapsed to their knees, clutching their heads. Even Cyril felt its effects, his thoughts clouded by a strange, overwhelming pressure. On the Titan. The neural disruptor is functioning as expected, the tactical officer reported. It's non-lethal, but highly disorienting. Their fleet's coordination is breaking down. Reyna nodded. Good, keep it at minimum intensity. We don't want to cause permanent damage. Lane tilted his head. You're being awfully generous, Captain. After everything they've done, I'm surprised you're holding back. Reyna's expression hardened. Because we're better than them. If we wanted to, we could wipe them out. But that's not who we are. The Xanthari's breaking point. On the Supremacy, chaos reigned. Officers stumbled through the corridors, their movements unsteady. The neural disruptor's effects were relentless, stripping away the Xanthari's ability to think clearly or act decisively. Commander, Orvik said, his voice strained. We can't withstand this. If the humans increase the intensity, they could incapacitate the entire fleet. Cyril gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He hated this, hated the helplessness, the humiliation. But he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. The Xanthari had lost. Order the fleet to stand down, he said through gritted teeth. Signal the humans. Tell them. We're ready to negotiate. Orvik blinked in surprise. Commander, you mean? Do it. Cyril roared, slamming his fist onto the console. Before they decide, we're not worth sparing. The human response. Minutes later, a message from the Xanthari fleet appeared on the Titan's monitors. It was brief but clear. We seek terms of peace. Reyna exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing. They'd finally come to their senses. Captain, Lane said, what are our terms? Reyna glanced at the holographic display, her expression resolute. Simple. They leave the Sol system immediately and agree never to return. Any further aggression will be met with less restraint. And if they refuse? Lane asked. They won't, Reyna said. Not after what they've seen. Cyril's decision. On the bridge of the Supremacy, Cyril read the human terms in silence. His claws tapped against the console, the only sound in the otherwise silent room. His officers watched him, their faces pale and anxious. We have no choice, Cyril said at last, his voice heavy with defeat. Transmit our agreement. The Xanthari armada will withdraw. Orvik nodded and relayed the message. As the Xanthari fleet powered down their weapons and prepared to retreat, Cyril stared at the distant figure of the Titan. This isn't over, he muttered under his breath. We will return. And next time, we'll be ready. A victory for humanity. As the Xanthari ships retreated beyond the edges of the solar system, The crew of the Titan erupted into cheers. For the first time in history, humanity had faced a galactic power, and won. But Captain Reyna remained calm, her gaze fixed on the retreating fleet. "This was just the beginning," she said quietly. "The galaxy knows about us now, and they'll be watching." Lane nodded. "Let them watch. If they try to challenge us, they'll learn what the Zenthori just did." Reyna allowed herself a small smile. "Let's hope they learn a different lesson." With the Sol system safe once more, the Titan resumed its quiet vigil, a sentinel guarding humanity's future. A shocking revelation. The Zenthori fleet slipped beyond the outer edges of the Sol system, their pride and power left fractured. On board the Supremacy, Commander Tyrell stood in silence, his gaze fixed on the dark void where the Titan had hovered. The echoes of defeat reverberated through his mind, but something deeper gnawed at him, a question he couldn't ignore. "Orvik," Tyrell said quietly, his tone devoid of its usual venom, "prepare a full analysis of the human ship's technology. I want to know how they achieved this impossible power." Orvik hesitated before responding. "Commander, their technology is centuries ahead of ours. It might take us decades." "Do it," Tyrell interrupted. "If we don't understand how they did this, the Zenthori will never recover." Aboard the Titan, Captain Reyna stood at her command station, watching as the Zenthori fleet disappeared from the holographic display. Relief rippled through the crew, but Reyna's expression remained thoughtful. "They'll come back," she said softly. "The Zenthori don't take losses lightly." Commander Lane frowned. "Do you really think they'd risk it after what we just showed them?" Reyna nodded. "They've seen our strength, yes. But we've also exposed something they can't resist: curiosity. They'll want to know how a primitive species became this advanced." Lane crossed his arms. "Let them wonder. By the time they figure it out, we'll be even stronger." Reyna didn't reply immediately. Instead, she turned to her science officer. "Dr. Harlow, any updates on the artifact's status?" The officer's face lit with excitement. "The artifact is stable, Captain. Its energy readings are off the charts, but we've confirmed it's powering the Titan at full capacity without any degradation." Lane raised an eyebrow. "The artifact? You mean to tell me this whole operation was fueled by that thing?" Dr. Harlow nodded. "It's unlike anything we've encountered. Its energy source is, well, limitless, as far as we can tell. Without it, the Titan would still be formidable, but with it, we're untouchable. The origin of humanity's power. The artifact in question was hidden deep within the Titan, a glowing orb of incomprehensible energy. It had been discovered a decade earlier in the asteroid belt, buried in a fragment of a long-destroyed celestial body. Initial scans suggested it wasn't of human origin. It was alien. Dr. Harlow had led the research team that unlocked its secrets. The artifact didn't just produce energy. It manipulated the very fabric of space and time. Humanity had reverse-engineered its properties, using them to create weapons, defenses, and propulsion systems far beyond anything Earth had previously known. "It's not just technology," Dr. Harlow had said during the initial briefing. "It's a gift, or a challenge, a message from whoever came before us. The galaxy takes notice." As the Zenthori retreated, the ripples of their defeat began to spread across the galaxy. In the hidden halls of the Galactic Council, species from every corner of the cosmos gathered to discuss the unprecedented event. "A single human ship defeated the Zenthori armada," one counselor said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "How is that possible?" Another counselor leaned forward, her expression grim. "The Zenthori underestimated them. Perhaps we all did. The question now is whether the humans are allies or a threat." The room fell silent as a third counselor spoke, his voice calm but authoritative. "We must proceed with caution. If humanity possesses technology of this magnitude, they could destabilize the entire galaxy or reshape it." Tyrell's gamble. In the aftermath of his retreat, Tyrell convened a secret meeting with his most trusted advisors. Maps of the Sol system flickered on the walls, alongside detailed scans of the Titan. "We underestimated the humans," Tyrell admitted, his voice heavy with frustration. "But now we know their secret. That ship isn't just advanced. It's powered by something beyond our understanding." One of his advisors, a scientist named Threx, stepped forward. "Commander, I've analyzed the energy signatures from their ship. They match an ancient Zenthari legend, the luminal core." Tyrell's eyes widened. "You're suggesting the humans have found the core?" Threx nodded. "It was said to be a relic of an ancient race, a source of limitless power. If the humans have it, they hold the key to domination." Tyrell's claws flexed as a dark determination filled him. "Then we must claim it for ourselves. Prepare an infiltration team. We'll take what is rightfully ours. Humanity's resolve." Back on the Titan, Captain Reyna stood before her crew, addressing them in the aftermath of their victory. "This was a battle we were forced to fight," she began. "But it won't be the last. The galaxy now knows what humanity is capable of, and they won't sit idly by." She glanced at the holographic display, where the artifact's glowing form hovered like a silent guardian. "We've proven our strength, but with that strength comes responsibility. The artifact is more than a weapon. It's a symbol of what we can achieve together." The crew erupted into applause, their spirits bolstered by Reyna's words. But even as they celebrated, Reyna's mind remained focused on the future. She knew the galaxy wouldn't leave humanity in peace. The Zenthari would return, and they wouldn't come alone. The final warning. As the Titan resumed its watchful position in the asteroid belt, a final message was broadcast from Earth to the galaxy at large. "To those who seek war, know this: humanity will defend itself with every ounce of strength we possess. But to those who seek peace, know that we stand ready to build a brighter future, together." The message echoed across the stars, a beacon of hope and a challenge to those who would threaten humanity. In the shadows of the galaxy, alliances began to form, plans were set in motion, and the stage was quietly prepared for the next chapter of humanity's story. For now, humanity stood victorious. But the galaxy was watching, waiting, and planning. And so was humanity.